I've been fortunate to have worked in a number of different sectors in my career. Started off in travel and tourism, then did a little bit in financial services before eventually moving into commercial property. And in those sectors I've also encountered some very different kinds of marketing function. Some that have undoubtedly been integrated and dynamic and real growth drivers within their organisations, and some which probably haven't to the same degree, although at a level they might have been doing some good marketing activity, producing some nice campaigns. I'll let you play the game of trying to work out which sector might correlate with which marketing function and whether or not that might be typical. So what are the different kinds of marketing function? Well, there are three that I've come across. The first I would call the comms factory. The comms factory is the highly reactive marketing function that gets given a set of sales targets and a marketing budget more or less as fait accompli and then told to get on with it. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that they just respond tactically. Oh, we need some advertising, please. Or actually, we need an event coming up. Go do it. The second type is what I would call the satellite function. They kind of sit in a parallel world alongside the business. It's a world that they inhabit and populate with favourability and awareness metrics. Every now and then they kind of come into orbit, a bit Halley's Comet style, but for the majority of the time they sit sort of in parallel but separate. And they might once again do some good work, but is it really relevant to and related to and integrated with the business? And finally, there's my view of nirvana, which is the truly integrated marketing function that both feeds into and helps inform the business plan as well as responding to it. And we'll come back and talk about that later. Now, there are some companies who are perfectly satisfied with having either type 1 or type 2 as their marketing function, and indeed it might, depending on the market, the sophistication and size of the organisation, be appropriate. But if you go down that route, there are some risks. First of all, the organisation could well lose touch with the marketplace. Unless you have a strong marketing function that's operating as the eyes and ears of the organisation, it could well be that the market moves on and the organisation stays still. Secondly, you lose what I consider to be that healthy tension between functions. So if you haven't got a strong, vibrant marketing organisation, then you potentially end up with a lopsided organisation, where either the sales team dominates or the ops team dominates. And I love my colleagues in both of those departments, but just as I wouldn't let marketeers on their own run the company, I don't think they should either. And finally, you leave the marketeers to their own devices in splendid isolation, and that's not great either. If you're not careful, they'll start to sort of worship at the mystic altar of creativity down in the basement somewhere. They'll burn lots of money. They'll win a few creative awards if they're lucky for their advertising agency, but they won't necessarily drive the business forward. So all of those have their risks. So integration then is the way ahead, the third option. How do you make it happen? Two key things you have to do. One, self-evidently, is run the function properly. But secondly, and as importantly, you need to be seen to be doing that. You need to earn your seat at the table. How do you do that? Well, here's my list of top tips. And my apologies if there's an element of preaching to the converted here. Number one, and most importantly, above all else, articulate the voice of the customer loud and proud within the organisation. If you do this well, then it provides you with a kind of customer-centric true north, a bearing that the organisation can follow, and a yardstick which you can use to evaluate all kinds of growth opportunities, from M&A opportunities to new market entry to new product development. How do you do it? Well, it might be about the big set piece of research, but it's about talking to your frontline staff who deal with customers on a day-to-day basis. It's about really analysing the complaints data. Customers every day, all day, provide you with some fantastic feedback, and it's amazing how many organisations don't really go the extra mile to understand that. So it's a constant process. Listen and articulate that voice. Number two, and these are in no particular order, I hasten to add, be pragmatic and not precious. The colour may be the concept and it might be everything to you, but your boardroom colleagues will not thank you if you throw your toys out of the pram if they want to change it. It's not about rolling over every time either. You need to choose your hill to die on. If somebody on a very subjective basis is undermining your carefully thought through marketing strategy, then stick to your guns. But if all they want is the shade of blue lightened a little bit, then actually, if it's not going to ruin your visual identity, it might be worth rolling over on that one. Number three, be user-friendly, especially to your FD and your CEO. So diversify, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and de-risk if you can. So test, learn, and scale up, rather than betting the ranch on a particular creative idea that seemed fabulous when the agency pitched it, but actually might not have the rigour behind it that you need. Number 4, take the organisation with you, and that really does mean the whole organisation, from the boardroom down through to the front line. Make sure you educate, make sure you manage expectations. If the first time your frontline staff see your campaign is when they see the ad break on TV or they open the paper, then you've missed a trick. And in the boardroom, work out who your key stakeholders are. So when I joined Barclays Stockbrokers, retail stockbroking organisation, the first people I sought out were the people that my predecessor had done their best to avoid. That was the FD and the compliance officer. I made sure they understood what we were doing, why we were doing it, and importantly, how they could help. And actually, even compliance officers, if you ask them nicely enough, will help you out. Which was a shock to me, but a nice one. At Barclays Premier Banking, as marketing director, I had a seat on the sales leadership team as well, and that was really crucial. The ability to interact with my sales colleagues, for us to understand our interdependencies was great. Even better was the opportunity to go for a beer with them after meetings, and that's when I got the real feedback that really helped me. Next one, integrate planning. Make sure you have a clear line of sight from the marketing plan to the business plan. Once again, Barclays Premier Banking, the sales guys and I sat down. We looked at the marketing plan and what leads we were going to generate. We looked at the sales numbers that had to be hit, worked out what the conversion rates had to be, and we had clear line of sight from every piece of marketing activity through to the sales that were meant to be provided. It was a real pain doing it. That did both our heads in, I don't mind saying. But at the end of it, we had a great understanding not only of what we individually had to deliver, but where the crossover and the interdependency was. And the science wasn't perfect, and it doesn't need to be necessarily. I'm sure some of the numbers and the assumptions were flawed, but at least by going through the rigour of doing the exercise, we developed that understanding. Number 6, drive organisational alignment. It's no good having a great marketing strategy that operates in isolation. Unless your learning and development policy and your reward and recognition policy are aligned to and support it, then you will be dead in the water. Number 7, be transparent. Don't make marketing mysterious and scary, whatever you do. Shout about your successes and own up to and learn from your failures. Knowledge is power, but not if you keep it to yourself. Number 8, have clarity on scope and accountability. So if the campaign runs doesn't hit its sales targets, but you over-delivered on the leads from the marketing function, and it was because the sales guys didn't convert, then are you going to be held accountable for that or not? Make sure you know up front. If you're being held accountable for something, make sure you have control of it. Be aware of dependencies and constraints. So don't run campaigns that are going to make the operational fabric of your organisation fall over. Is the call centre geared up to take the response from the ad campaign when it breaks? Number 10, set realistic objectives. Don't be blackmailed by the organisation into agreeing to sign up for something that you know you're not going to achieve. And even worse, and I have seen this done, don't reverse engineer. So don't work out, okay, what do I need to say I'm going to be able to hit to be able to justify this budget. That way madness and a short career lies. Number 11, measure, but only what makes sense. And if you want some criteria for deciding what makes sense, I'll give you 2. One is, what would you change as a result of the data that you get back? And if the answer is nothing, then don't do it. And the second is, are you happy to share the results around the organisation? And once again, if you're not, then don't bother doing the measurement. There's nothing worse than spending lots of time and effort. And once again, I've seen it done, and then have people try and bury the results. Nearly at the end, the last couple. Keep your head up. Be the eyes and ears of the organisation. Make sure that you're not just lurching head down from campaign to campaign. You need to keep the organisation in touch with the marketplace. And finally, be responsive. Markets change, budgets go up and down, usually down. Organisations change, reconfigure themselves. The good marketing teams adapt and respond. They roll with the punches and they keep delivering. Don't be King Canute. And if you do all of that, then hopefully you should find that you are in a position to genuinely drive growth within the organisation. You should not only have a seat at the table, but hopefully be the recognised subject matter expert, and your view should be solicited by your colleagues. And then you will be genuinely a growth leader as well as the leader of the marketing function. Finally, however, and I hate to end on a down note, I think it's worth saying that if you do all that, and still the only time people come to knock on your door is to check the colour of the logo, or perhaps order a new mouse mat to support the latest HR initiative, then actually at that point it might be worth thinking about moving on. Thank you very much. I'll hand you over to David.